So thank you everyone for joining us. This is the regular monthly meeting, although a little bit tardy for June of 2026. Today's Monday, June 29th. We are virtual only. This is the regular monthly meeting again of the Human Rights Commission. We have a few esteemed guests to talk to us this evening about mental health issues and our little small agenda of our regular business. I'm going to take a roll call of the members present. As a reminder, we are recording this meeting in compliance with the open meeting law. Also, if you would like to speak and you're a member of the public, please use the little emoticon symbol for the raised hand at the top of your screen. And either me or Randy, the vice chair, will notice you and let you know if you've been approved to speak. So otherwise, we yield everything through our vice chair this evening, who'll be running the meeting. So small housekeeping, board members present. Vice Chair Randy Feldman.
Here.
Clerk Carrie Witherell.
Here.
Member Bernard Reese.
Here.
Member Anahit Marudian.
Here.
Member Drew Schneblin.
Here.
Member Reverend Jonathan Slavinskis.
Here.
So this is great, everyone. I really do appreciate you joining in. We have a quorum, so I will hand it over to you, Randy.
Okay. So to begin the meeting, we oftentimes start with our period. First, let me just say for public comment that if anybody in the public would like to comment, we have 2-minute slots available, and you can let us know if you would like to come online and comment. We also, do we have approval of prior meeting minutes, or I think we don't have that, do we today?
No, we do have it.
We do?
Yes.
Motion to approve?
I'll second that.
All right, so we have a motion to approve, I believe they're the April minutes that were sent out with the first failure to launch meeting. Everyone should have that. If anyone has any comments, you should make them right now. If not, we're going to go ahead because we have a motion and a second. And I will take a roll call vote of the members present to see if the motion carries. So we have the Vice Chair, Randy Feldman.
Aye.
Clerk Carrie Witherell.
Aye.
Member Bernard Reese.
Aye.
Thank you. Member Drew Schneblin.
Aye.
Member Anahit Marudian.
Aye.
And Member Reverend Jonathan Slavinskis.
Aye.
Thank you all. That motion carries.
Okay, next is, would anybody like to read the HRC mission statement, the Human Rights Commission mission statement?
I do have that available if nobody else wants to read that.
Okay, that'd be great.
All right, Okay. So the Human Rights Commission mission. The HRC was established to promote the city's human rights policy. It is the policy of the city to assure that every individual shall have equal access to and benefit from all public services, to protect every individual in the enjoyment and exercise of civil rights, and to encourage and bring about mutual understanding and respect among all individuals of the city. It is the goal of the HRC to ensure that all city residents are treated fairly and equally by eliminating bigotry, discrimination, intolerance, and prejudice. Our work requires us to address institutional racism so that as a community we can achieve racial equity. Our work also requires us to make visible the unheard, unearned, and unquestioned privilege enjoyed by some members of our community to the detriment of others. We take time to make this acknowledgement to educate so the path can be cleared for healing. Key terms, institutional racism. The term institutional racism refers specifically to the ways in which institutional policies create different outcomes for different racial groups. The institutional policies may never mention any racial groups, but their effect is to create advantages for whites and oppression and disadvantage for people from groups classified as people of color. Racial equity. The term racial equity is the active state in which race does not determine one's livelihood or success. It is achieved through proactive work to address root causes of inequalities to improve outcomes for all individuals. That is, through the elimination or shifting of policies, practices, attitudes, and cultural messages that reinforce different outcomes by race or fail to eliminate them in privilege. The term privilege describes the unearned social power in informal institutions of society to all members of a dominant group. For example, white privilege and male privilege. Privilege is usually invisible to those who have it because we are trained not to see it, but nevertheless, it puts them at an advantage against those who do not have it.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. Thank you. Okay, does anyone else have available to them? I don't have this one. The land acknowledgement.
I have the land acknowledgement. I can read that.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we will continue our practice of acknowledging the traditional, ancestral territory of the First Peoples of Massachusetts on which land we are convening tonight. Nipmuc Nation is what is now Worcester County. While the Nipmuc history predates written history, records from the 1600s inform us that the original inhabitants of Worcester dwelled principally in 3 locations: Packagug, Tattaset, and Wigwam Hill. It is important to make this acknowledgement and to honor the ancestors that have come before us. Unfortunately, it is all too easy to live in this land without ever hearing the traditional names and history of the people who first resided and prospered in these lands and continue to reside and prosper.
Okay, thank you, Anahi. Okay, so before we get to our guests, I just wanted to make this statement about what we're going to do next month. We're hoping that we would have Legal Services of Central Massachusetts come and present on some of the things that they do to defend people's rights. But either way, we're also going to talk to, and this is the precursor or in addition to what's going to be presented today on mental health. As we know, mental health is a very big, important issue that is constantly changing, and there have been some real successes and some real problems in Worcester. And we're going to hear a lot about that today. We're very excited to hear about that. But we also want to talk a little bit about what's been going on with CHL, Community Health Link, no longer being a player in Worcester and dissolving, and what that's going to mean for services and who's going to provide them and how they may or may not be provided in the future. So at the next meeting, we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then we're also going to talk some about the lawsuit that was brought against Worcester over the police responses to mental health problems in the community when people call 911. And we're going to talk about what the lawsuit states. And just to be more fully aware of the problem that's been identified in that lawsuit. No, we're not going to pontificate on the legality of whether it's going to succeed or not succeed, whether the lawsuit is correct or not correct. I don't really think that's our role, but our role is certainly to keep ourselves and the community informed over what the claim is so that we can fully discuss the issues that are raised in that lawsuit, and that we can banter about those issues among ourselves, and if the community would like to join in, and thus do public information and education on what the issues are that lawsuit presents. So next time we meet, we're going to handle those 2 issues, and hopefully also Legal Services of Central Massachusetts will tell us a lot about what they do in their anti-discrimination work, in their housing work, in their immigration work, and everything that they provide to the community, so we can be more fully informed of what they see as problems and the solutions that they can offer to all of the residents of Worcester. With that, we're so grateful to have Jennifer. Jen, I guess you go by Jen sometimes. I know you as Jennifer.
Randy,
Jennifer
hey,
Nicole.
Randy, can I just interrupt for a quick second before we go on? I wanted to introduce everyone to our new staff member in the office. He's with us tonight virtually also. His name is Justo Soto. He's our new human rights specialist in the office. He's going to be working directly with me and Dawn, who works on strictly accessibility. Justo will be sort of bridging the gap between accessibility and human rights. And so I'm going to let you tell Justo, I'm going to let you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, and then you'll be introduced to the Human Rights Commission board members. So go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Justo. I'm a foreign attorney from Venezuela. I have been living in the city of Worcester since 2014. Recently, I went to law school and I graduated in 2023. I'm pursuing my bar certification in order just to move forward. And with that, I have been working with different nonprofits in Worcester and also in Boston. Mostly my whole background is related to immigration law, mostly in litigation. And I mean, I love Worcester since I have been here. I tried to move, but the city welcomed me so much that I decided just to stay here. So it's a pleasure just to meet everyone over here.
Welcome. We're so glad that you're on the team working for the city of Worcester. That's wonderful to hear. Just same as Jennifer. Just wonderful that Worcester is an accommodating, open city where people can take their rightful place in our government and do great works for the community. So, Justo, thank you so much for joining and for letting us know about your presence. And I'll try very hard not to steal you away to come work for our office.
Thank you so much.
But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
Randy.
Sure. Okay. All right. Jennifer, can you give us a little bit of a background about your title and what you do in the city, and further what presentation you would like to make along with Nikki, I think it is?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Randy. I'm happy to do that. We have a presentation I will share at some point, but my name is Jennifer Nashijova. I live in Worcester as well. I work for the Worcester Division of Public Health. I oversee the Community Health Office. We have several projects or units I oversee, from maternal and child health, from tobacco prevention work, ensuring that regulations are up to date in Worcester. I do some built environment work as well. But for today, we are here to present on our behavioral health grants that we do have within the division, and to see and really talk about mental health and some of the programs that we do have going on. And I'll let Nikki introduce herself, and then I'll start the presentation that we have prepared for today.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Are you hearing me right?
Yes.
Hearing me well? Okay, thank you. My name is Nikki Nixon. I'm the interim director for public health within the city of Worcester, and I've been with the division within Worcester for just 10 years now. So I've been here for a bit, but my when I started, I was served as an epidemiologist and built a small epi team in support of the COVID response. And now I'm serving as an interim or acting director. Nice to meet you all.
Great.
Thank you so much.
I'll go ahead and share presentation. Can you all see that presentation?
Yes, we can.
Great. Great.
Okay, I know Jen will present the majority of this presentation as this is her area, but I will, just kickstart with a brief overview. I think we mentioned a little bit about the structure of DPH, but the Worcester Division of Public Health is a division within the Department of Health and Human Services led by our new commissioner, Seema Dixit. Within our Division of Public Health, we have about 24 staff members when fully staffed, and we have 5 offices that are really modeled after the premise of public health, being public health nursing. The nurses focus a lot more on communicable diseases, and there are some state mandated services that we need to provide, monitoring TB cases, responding to foodborne illnesses or cases of foodborne illnesses. They were, pivotal in the COVID-19 response, et cetera. We host an emergency preparedness office, which pretty much does coordinating and planning of for natural disasters, natural or man-made disasters. They were also pivotal in the COVID-19 response. And if there were to be any kind of man-made or natural, any kind of outbreak, for example, anthrax is something that we always test our plans on. So sort of that kind of disaster planning, and we work very well with the city's emergency management team for coordination efforts. We have a small epidemiology team. When I say small, I mean like 2 people supporting all of our program evaluations and leading health assessments, like our community health assessments and progress on our community health improvement plan. Our administration office and our largest office, which is the office that Jen leads, our community health office, which I think when fully staffed, we have about 6 members, Jen leading that team. And really our community health office is the office that really has a lot of grants coming in to support local efforts. So we do, while we don't provide direct services around behavioral health, being mental or mental health or substance use prevention, we do receive grant funding and we subcontract with local organizations that are already doing these services to enhance or augment these services. We do this by modeling best practices or strong practices, enforcing or employing evidence-based methodology or strategies or tactics. And as you see here, you know, we have a lot of framework that Jen will get into. And I think, Jen, I think you should be good to go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Nikki. So as Nikki mentioned, we write a lot of grants. So I wanted to give you a quick overview of just the behavioral health grants we've had over the past 10 years. On your screen, the first top 3 are the ones we have currently, but at the bottom are some of the other grants that we've had over the last 10 years. So ranging from youth prevention, early intervention, opioid response, across system coordination, as well as some of the grants that we do continue to have. We have been lucky that every single time we have applied or reapplied for grants, we've been able to receive them. So really, as Nikki mentioned, as a public health department, we don't do direct service, but we do prevention. There's a focus on prevention, education, and health promotion. So today I'm going to present on the 3 grants that we currently have within the division. All those grants, we have 1 more year of funding, and we hope to reapply for that grant funding come next year as well. And as Nikki mentioned, a lot of our work is really data-driven. So we do a lot of assessments. All the first year of our grants is really embedded in assessments, whether it's administering surveys or holding focus groups. What we get from the first year of our grants really drives our decision-making, but really helps us to understand the local needs that we do have in the community. The first grant that I'm going to talk about is called MASCO 3B. That stands for Massachusetts Collaborative for Action, Leadership and Learning 3. What that means is that we have had MASCO 1, 2, and this is 3 now. This grant is VSAS funded. It's a 4-year grant that we received. As I mentioned, we'll be starting our final year of this grant come July 1. This grant is focusing on youth prevention. So we work with middle schoolers and high schoolers around prevention strategies. So we work very closely with community-based organizations as well as the Worcester Public Schools to ensure that we are able to implement this work. All our grants are BSAS funded, and with BSAS, there are so many frameworks that we are required to use. For this grant, we use the Strategic Prevention Framework, which is displayed on the screen. What that means is that we spend about 1 year doing assessments, right? So being able to work with community, to be able to draft questions, administer them, analyze the data, be able to hold focus groups. So being able to engage parents, youth, community leaders, decision makers to hold focus groups and come up with a plan that then we follow for the next 3 years. And a big part of our work is capacity building. We are a pretty small department, as Nikki mentioned, about 24 people within the Division of Public Health. So we do depend on other organizations and stakeholders to move the work forward. So we really put time and energy into building partnerships as we do these grants, as we implement them. So we are intentional about going to, as you all know, Worcester is big, it's very diverse. So we are intentional about going into each community to identify stakeholders who are well trusted and being able to align our goals with their goals. In some cases, we're able to stipend people, but in most cases, we just do skill development, training, and expand our capacity that way. For this grant, there's a big focus on preventing first usage of substances. As we all know, the later someone uses substances, the less likely they are to be addicted to those substances. So working with middle schoolers and high schoolers to make sure that we delay or prevent usage of substances. For MASCO 3B, the focus is on alcohol, cannabis, and nicotine. As most of you know here, a few years ago, vaping was such a big challenge. So for this grant, when we applied for it, we were intentional about including nicotine prevention strategies into the grant to ensure that our youth get the right skills to not start vaping. And as we do the work for this grant, for example, we work very closely with the Worcester Public Schools. Every 2 years, we administer a survey to middle schoolers and high schoolers, and we use that to guide our work as we move forward as well. I wanted to really touch also on one of the HOPE frameworks that we do use for MASCO 3B. I'm sure most of you here are familiar with adverse childhood experiences. How I describe that is it just describes what happened to a child. Now, when we talk about the HOPE framework, that describes what can help that child to thrive despite of all the challenges that they might be facing. So adverse childhood experiences, we think about stressors and traumatic experiences, whether it's divorce or having a parent who is incarcerated or going through domestic violence or abuse or neglect. This framework that we do use under working with the schools and different organizations to implement is focusing on the opposite, right? Being able to really understand the 4 building blocks that can make a youth thrive. So we talk about relationships. It is important for youth to have at least one adult who they can talk to. So encouraging our leaders or our teachers or our, for example, faith-based organizations to ensure that each youth can at least have that supportive relationship that can help them thrive. Then we talk about the environment, so ensuring our youth have a safe and equitable environment for them to live in, and then engagement. So either a youth being able to be involved in sports or other programs within the school, or making sure that they have a sense of belonging, that they feel like they belong where they're at, is another thing that we do help to enhance within the schools to ensure that our youth continue to thrive. And the last building block that we do focus on is emotional and social growth. I must say, as an immigrant, that is one block as I raise my child that has been challenging, because I was never given the space to really be able to share my feelings. So as I raise my child and as we teach this framework, ensuring that we change that narrative and we're able to provide the space for our youth to be able to express themselves, be able to play, be able to say, hey, I'm not doing well, and being able to hold that space for them. So we'd use a lot of frameworks, but as Nikki mentioned, they're evidence-based frameworks that we do use that have been proven to work. So as a division, working on not only helping our community to understand adverse childhood experiences, negative experiences, but also understanding that positive ones also matter, and being able to make the space to ensure that we're intentional as we engage with the youth, middle schoolers and high schoolers, that we are able to create those positive childhood experiences as we go along. And also, as we present, I'm hoping that if you have any questions, please do feel free to ask. So many frameworks, so many concepts. So if you have any questions at any point, please feel free to ask us as well.
I have a question about vaping. How in the world do you get people not to start vaping? Like, what would be a strategy to try to get someone not to do that?
I think one of the things that we do is to focus on what the youth that are not vaping, for example, what do they have in place of protective factors? What is it that they have in the home or in the school that is helping them not to stop vaping? And Nikki will talk a little bit about that on the next slide, maybe clarify how we do that as well.
Quick question as well. Obviously it's a big issue. I live right on Lincoln Street, Worcester. Every little shop that's there has vapes, right? Everyone's selling vapes, everyone's doing things and whatnot. You talked about working closely with the school system there. Do you work closely with the Board of Health for the City of Worcester, of course, and Worcester Police there? And are there numbers of violations that we have stats on for those businesses that are selling to underage individuals? Because I mean, we grew up in a generation, right? Like, oh, don't smoke cigarettes, don't smoke cigarettes. You know, it's illegal to like guarantee them. These kids walk into every shop and it hits them in the face right there, you know? And so do you think there's more we can be doing as a city to put pressure on to say, okay, we have to really start dialoguing with businesses to say enough is enough?
Absolutely. We do work closely with the Board of Health in Worcester. Currently, I oversee the tobacco enforcement program too within the division. We have about 235 retailers, tobacco retailers. We do try to visit each retailer 3 times a year. The first visit is education to make sure they understand the regulations. The second visit is we do enforcement to see if they are following the regulations that they were told in the previous visit. And the third visit is we do employ a team of youth who go in to try and purchase cigarettes as well. And if they are sold to, then we are able to find that retailer. And if they keep continuing to do it, eventually they will lose their permit. Could we do more? Absolutely. But at this point, that's a structure we have in place, being able to visit each retailer 3 times a year and being able to do some work around that.
If you did more, what would that be? Like more of the same or something different?
Nikki, you're
One
muted.
moment. Oh, I'm sorry. I was muted. I'm sorry. Just wanted to maybe put in context or what Jen just said around we have one tobacco coordinator who coordinates these enforcement activities and educational activities. So that's one person serving those 235 retailers, as Jen mentioned. And in the summer, we employ about two or three youth compliance workers. And so in the summer, they are able to go and do those compliance checks. So if we had a bigger staff, we would be able to do more, but just wanted to really highlight that it's one person that is really undertaking all of these efforts for the city.
And ready to answer your question, what could we do more? I think it really comes down to ensuring that our youth don't start vaping at all, right? So really, again, focusing on prevention and ensuring that schools have different programs within the schools that prevent our youth from vaping, because they already know what the negative impacts are. And they're not really scared about them. So what can we do as youth leaders or as a public health department to ensure that they don't start smoking at all from the get-go? What can we put in place as protective factors that ensure that our youth understand that that's a long-term negative decision and make sure they don't make it at all? So again, I think it comes down to programming and as being able to meet youth where they're at. But most importantly, a lot of times as we do this work, we ensure that we have youth at the table. As I mentioned earlier, we always say we shouldn't do, and you can't do nothing about us without us. So one of the things that we do try to do is to ensure that the youth are part of our meetings, our coalitions, and they are bought in. So a youth is more likely to listen to another youth. So as we teach our youth how to teach others and enhance this work, we hope that over time, less and less youth would stop using as well. And also one of the things that we hear as we engage with youth is that there isn't anything for them to do. So they're idle, right? So really making sure that as a city, we put in place certain programs to keep our youth engaged and really working with those leaders, stakeholders who they already trust in their communities to ensure that they are able to bring this message to the youth in those communities. Because I, Jennifer, am unable to be able to, let's say, go to the Ghanaian community and be able to talk about this work, but we do work with churches in that community who are able to then meet youth where they're at, even in their faith-based organizations, to be able to move this work forward.
I had a quick question regarding, you mentioned, meeting youth where they are. This might be a little repetitive and you probably answered to an extent, but are there any collaborations or active work taking place with Worcester Public Schools, and how is that, maybe if there is something in form of education or students getting involved with some more hands-on way, is there anything taking place at the moment in regards to that?
Currently, I would say no, we attend their monthly meetings, quarterly meetings that they have within their schools. I'll take that back. We did administer the survey earlier this year, and they were able to help us to help the youth take it both for middle school and high school. So at least the survey, they're still taking that. So once we get the data, then being able to work with them to implement programming has been challenging. For what has been easier for us when it comes to engaging youth has been able for us to meet them in the community. So at the church, for example, at the mosque, for example, right, we've had to be creative to find ways to engage youth because it's been challenging within the schools, right? They have a tight schedule, and also there's so many permissions and ways that they don't want to be held liable when it comes to us coming into the school. So we've had to just actually meet youth after school or in the summer months when they're at the park or when they go to different organizations. We've been able to engage youth that way. I want to say that with the Worcester Public Schools, an ongoing relationship and partnership. And recently we had a change in leadership there too, right? So I feel like we took a step back because now we have to get to know new people, but we continue to work on that partnership as well and meet youth where they're at.
And the
Thank you.
survey, what kind of questions do you ask, or what kind of data do you get from the survey that you find useful?
I'll let Nikki answer that for the survey.
So the youth health survey that we administer within the Worcester Public Schools, on the census, at the census level, not a sample, and we've been doing it since 2013. It's modeled after the National CDC Youth Risk Behavior Survey that really is risk heavy, but we do incorporate some protective factors as you're seeing here. So it assess questions around or behaviors around drinking, alcohol, first initiation of alcohol, whether they've had consumed alcohol within the past 30 days of taking the survey or just in their lifetime, marijuana use. So it's heavy on substance use. It's also has questions around diet and dietary habits, screen time. It has questions around sexual health or sexual behavior. And some of these protective factors, as you're seeing here. And just to go back to the topic, the youth health survey that we administer within the public schools do highlight or justifies the framework that we're using. So as you can see here, students who reported that they have an adult that they trust and is present within the home or just present for to talk about the future are less likely to report having consumed an alcoholic beverage in the past 30 days, likewise marijuana, and likewise vaping. Similarly, students who are engaged in an after-school program is less likely, or students reported, less likely consuming alcohol and those substances as compared to students who do not participate in alcohol. And the same holds true for hopelessness and family dinners. And so these are what Jen has stated as protective factors. And these are some of the factors that we highlight and promote when we do meet youth where they're at, and also parents as well. So it goes both ways, right? So we do educate parents on these protective factors. And I believe Jen will touch up on that in some of the subsequent slides. Right?
Can I ask what hopefulness means? Like, what is that about?
Right. So it's a short for the question asked, are you hopeful about the future? And so this is how we derived the results from that.
The survey also does have a few questions on mental health as well, right?
Right. Yes, for sure. It assesses mental health and suicidal ideation as well. Thank you.
Any other questions?
So mental health and suicidal ideation, that's also measuring the same kind of things, adult presence in the home, after school programs, hopefulness, and family dinners, and seeing if that affects those mental health phenomena
right.
as well?
So we do cross tabulation. So we take the students who've answered negatively around or both, and this is illustrating both, right? And we just do some cross tabulation on those who've answered that they have someone present and that they can trust or they are hopeful against the answers for the consumption of substance use.
And you find similar results on those two questions as to the ones presented on the chart here?
Correct. And so justifying that these practices are protective of engaging in substance use and or having good mental health.
Thanks.
Welcome.
So, right, we wanted to just quickly mention some of the work that we have done in the community. Using the funds that we have gotten under MassCore 3B, we have been able to train about 30 local individuals in a 3-day HOPE framework facilitator training. As I said before, we will have one person overseeing this grant, so it is important that we build our capacity, and how we do that is to train others to understand the framework and also to be able to implement it in the community with the youth as they do their work. We have also been able to train over 2,000 community members and parents around this framework and how that really can be practical as you engage with your kids in the home or in the community as well. We've had to be creative when it comes down to outreach efforts, being able to do work both in person and virtually. We, as I mentioned earlier, we've been successful engaging folks through faith-based organizations, so about 11 churches in the last year that we have engaged with, as well as the most impactful part for the last year for me has been the fact that we have engaged the mosque pretty heavily. They do come to all our events and have gotten trained when it comes to the HOPE framework. And as of this year, we'll be hosting an annual youth summit where we'll be able to share results from the survey comprehensively and be able to create a space to be able to celebrate, increase awareness, share resources, and improve connectivity among Worcester residents and the youth that we do serve.
Can I ask the HOPE facilitator certification?
Yes.
Can anybody join up to take that certification, or do you have to come from some sort of institutional or parental or something point of view or presence? And what is taught in a HOPE facilitator certification generally?
Sounds good. Because we had only 30 spots to train people, we had to pay for folks to get trained. So we were intentional about who signed up for that training. We did give preference to folks that work with the youth every single day. So teachers within the schools, for example, or leaders within youth certain organizations also got trained. I want to say that public health, 4 of us also got trained. So we gave preference to people who work with the youth every single day, including pastors or the imam from the mosque as well, because we had limited spots. The HOPE framework, I'm going to go back a little bit, talk about what that entails. So it's these 4 building blocks that I mentioned earlier. So relationships, environment, engagement, and emotional growth. That's the foundational building blocks for the HOPE framework that focuses on increasing positive childhood experiences.
Jen, I just wanted to add to Jen's answer here. So the intent of training those who are serving youth is to train them and hopefully have them train others. So we utilize, or the goal was to have that train the trainer model.
See, and when you have the youth summit and you come out with the results,
I was wondering, sorry to interrupt you, Randy. I was wondering, like you mentioned about the training educators and then having educators train the students. Is there a way you guys track that sort of engagement to see how far it extends normally?
We do. We have to submit reports to BSAS every 3 months. So all the folks that we trained and they continue to do their work within their community, they submit reports that we're able to put together and say, this is the number of people that we trained in this last 3 months.
Anyone else? So the youth summit that you're going to have, or you're going to announce the results of a lot of this, how do you let the community know about that? Is it on the city's website, or do you have a Facebook site? Like, how would we know the date if we weren't connected?
It's a good question, Randy. We try to have all this on the city website. We don't know how often it's visited by
Yeah.
community members. We have Facebook, we have Instagram, we have TikTok, and we try to put this out there. But we are working on just making our website more visible at this point. And we send out mass emails as well. We're working on hiring a communications specialist who will help us really ensure that this information is out there as well.
Well, I think Patricia can give you all our emails so that
Okay.
you could be notified, so we could see the results. So you might get some takers on that.
We'll be happy to do that.
Just a quick question as well. I was going to ask, are you looking to get involved with more faith-based organizations to grow your population there? And how are you looking to do that as well?
Absolutely. The program manager is always looking to expand her network. She calls them trusted messengers. So if you're willing to be able to meet with her and learn more about the program and how you can get involved, we'll be happy to also reach out to you.
Thank you.
Any other questions before I move on to the next grant that we do have? Okay. Our next grant that I'm going to talk about is called Diversion to Care Grant. Also, again, this is a BSAS funded grant. It's a 3-year grant, meaning that we are entering the 3rd year of this grant. This grant is really focusing on serving people who have both mental health and substance misuse disorder, who have had a touch point with the criminal legal system, or at risk or going through the criminal legal system. So being able to put in place diversion programs or deflection programs to ensure that folks do not end up in the criminal legal system. This is an opioid prevention grant, really focusing on ensuring that we strengthen and establish collaboration among community organizations, whether it's public health, behavioral health, public safety, healthcare, but most importantly, the criminal legal system as well. For this grant as well, we spent a whole year just doing assessments. Again, asset mapping to understand what Worcester has for resources, right? And being able to see what we have to leverage and working on ensuring that folks that don't have access, those resources do have access. One of the things that we did is using another framework called the sequential intercept model map that is required for us to use as part of this grant, but looking at the system in general, what exists in Worcester. I'm going to go to the next page to just show folks what we got from that workshop. It was a 2-day workshop. We're intention on who we engaged. And as we mentioned earlier, the other grant was a youth prevention grant. This is more of an opioid grant. So for the center of this grant is for us to be able to center the voice of folks who lived the experience. So folks that have mental health challenges and are also either using or have used in the past, right? Those are the people that we center when it comes to this grant. So we had a 2-day workshop to really look at Worcester in its totality to see what does Worcester have for resources. As we mentioned earlier, if you look at Intercept Zero at the top here under crisis services, you see that we had mentioned CHL as a resource that we do have. So as their services are transitioning to other organizations, we are looking to now find out who those organizations are. We already know who they are, a few of them, and being able to partner with them when doing this work. So I had just wanted to just bring that up a little bit to show everyone some of the assets that we do have under this grant we're able to get in the 1st year as well. I will go back.
Can I
Yeah,
ask
go
what
ahead,
respite? What does respite mean in that context? Hospital crisis, respite.
Respite, from my experience, is that, for example, we have some individuals who are in group homes and may not have a long-term group home placement. So they are put in respite for like a month or 2 as they look for long-term placement for them in terms of housing. Again, we did assessments or surveys, focus groups as well, really centering folks with lived experience. This grant, we've done a lot of work around Narcan training and distribution. On the city website, we have a Narcan locator map. So we have boxes in the community that have Narcan. And if you go to that map, you're able to see where those boxes are. and we ensure that there's Narcan in those boxes just in case of an overdose in those hot spots. We had to work to establish an advisory council as well. We don't do this work in isolation. We do partner with different organizations under the different buckets of umbrellas of the grants that we do have that help advise on the work that we are doing. We got some staff trained, as well as engaging with over 13 organizations that do this work as well.
On the Narcan, Jen, sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah. On the Narcan, do you work independent of, or do you ever work with the police to make sure that all police officers have Narcan with them and are trained to use it, at least police officers that have street duties? Or is that completely separate from what you folks do?
I want to say it's separate. We haven't trained police officers on how to administer Narcan or if they have it on them. Last year, we did get a chance to go visit the jail here in Worcester, and they do have Narcan as part of their kits that they carry around with them. How they get trained, I'm not aware.
Yeah, one time I saw on Main Street in Worcester where somebody OD'd in the middle of the street, and the police came, didn't have Narcan, and a former drug addicted person did have Narcan and stepped in and provided the Narcan. And that made me wonder, I was a little surprised that the police officers didn't have Narcan on them.
I take note of that and find out if they need for us to supply them with Narcan, because we do have that, and have been intentional about ensuring that it's placed in places where people tend to overdose and is available to everyone at no cost as well.
Thank you.
As I mentioned earlier, all about assessments and centering the voice of the lived experience, we did have a survey that we administered. We did want to just show some of the common themes or emerging themes that came out of the survey that we administered that guide who we partner with in terms of partnerships moving forward. So simple things like peer-to-peer support was something that was mentioned as a need for others, having somebody else. Again, relationship building, have someone else that they can trust, whether they're using or they're in recovery, having a peer that they can trust and be able to talk to. Housing is always an issue and continues to come up as well. And re-entry and recovery support, some of the things that came out of the survey that we administered last year to the community. So in line with these themes, emerging themes, we then partner with organizations. As we mentioned earlier, we don't do direct service provision, but we identify organizations that do so, and we're able to contract with them to do the work alongside them. This is a list of some of the organizations that we have been able to work with. So AIDS Project Worcester, for example, they really help with harm reduction and the provision of drug checking program, for example. They are the ones that help with Narcan training. So if anybody needs to be trained, whether it's an individual or an organization, just calling them, they'll have someone to train a group of people, an individual, and provide Narcan as well. We work with Open Sky Community Health Services to offer sober housing. As I mentioned earlier, housing continues to be a barrier. So we work with them to be able to narrow that gap. And then reentry support services as well. We work with Pioneer Family Health Services. They hold support groups behind the wall, 3 months for fathers prior to them being released from jail. So being able to do some skill building with fathers 3 months prior to release. And we worked with Uhai for Health. They support and the Kenyan immigrant population, did focus groups, they hold weekly support groups and provide wraparound services for that population as well. These are the partners we worked with last year. I did want to also highlight our current partners as well. So as I mentioned, APW, there is GAP that is providing sober housing placement for individuals, and Pioneer Family Health Services. We have 1 more year of this grant, and we hope to continue to partner with them for the next year as well. I did want to stop here and ask if you have any questions in regards to diversion to care as well.
Of those things that you mentioned that you work with, those partners,
Yes.
housing and the other things that you mentioned. Do you
Mhm.
find that you're more active in some of those areas than others?
I would I would say so. I think I would say that stigma is still something that we need to work on. So we find that we engage more folks than others at this point. We do facilitate a monthly meeting at Everyday Miracles for folks with lived experience and try to understand those needs before we actually partner with organizations. But it can be challenging. We find that smaller organizations that are in the community may not have what it needs to contract with the city, right? They may not have the right certification, or they're unable to have the capacity that is needed to move the work forward. So a lot of times we tend to work with big organizations that are already established versus smaller ones that may need the funding and do the work every single day.
And then do you ever, I'm sure you give them some like help in saying that you folks need to do this institutionally to be able to gather the recognitions or certifications for us to be able to support you more? Is that how that would work if they're small?
Yeah, we do. There's I want to say 2 organizations that we worked with in the last year to help them to become nonprofits, get registered, to go through that process that can be really hectic. And so being able to just sit with them and being able to do some education around that is something we have done in the past as well.
Right.
The final grant that I'm going to talk about is Prevention in Early Childhood, PEC grant. For this grant, we are looking at the family in its totality. So really working with parents or caregivers who are either in recovery or actively using, but have kids 0 to 11 years old. Again, it's the same framework as I mentioned earlier, the SPF framework. It's a 3-year grant as well. We have 1 more year of funding on this grant. For this grant, we really focus on doing trauma trainings every single month. We host those and we have support groups. We do educational campaigns and community engagement. We did an assessment about 4 years ago, and we hope to do another assessment as well. But for this grant, it's really focusing on the family unit, trying to break those cycles within the family. So engaging both the mother and the father, if possible, but they have to have a child 0 to 11 years old. We have held over 12 trauma training Tuesdays every single year. We have supported over 100 incarcerated fathers before they are released. We've hosted over 15 support groups as well as being able to build coalitions and those partnerships as well under this grant.
When you say this grant or the grants you were mentioning, does that mean that's grants that you got from others to do the work, or grants that you issue to others to do the work?
That's a good question, Randy. These are grants that we have applied for and received the funding. But since we don't do direct service provision, then we subcontract the work out to other organizations that are already experts in that area. So when we talk about Trauma Training Tuesdays, we work with Worcester Addresses Childhood Trauma, that we subcontract with them and they do the trainings and then we oversee the work. The same thing for support groups. We are trying to not reinvent the wheel. There are already organizations in Worcester who are already doing the work. So being able to work with them to enhance their services by providing financial support and capacity as well for them to move the work forward.
Just wanted to add to that about the model of receiving federal or state grants and, enhancing our local CBOs. And so we've been sustaining this model for, I think, throughout our existence in public health. And it's just really the framework of how we operate. There are grants that a local health department would be better suited to receive. And so we write in a lot of our organizations that we partner with into the grants in order to receive them. So, and I know I've talked about this before, but if there is a grant that is better suited, that can go directly to a CBO, we will write a letter of support for them. So there is no gatekeeping, and it's just a model that if it's better within the health department and then we subcontract out, we tend to work that way, just as a general practice in public health.
What does CBO stand for?
I know. I'm sorry,
Community-based
community-based
organizations.
organizations.
Okay. Maybe everyone else knows but me, so thank you. very
No,
much.
it's I try not to do that, but yes,
Okay.
community-based organizations.
And any other questions?
So that's really nice, though, that the way you put it, that you don't act as a gatekeeper. Like if you think it's a direct thing that will work just as well and you can facilitate that, you do that. You don't need to be the one that they come to ask of. That's nice.
It's true. All right, and finally, connecting our community to resources. We are working hard to be more visible, as I mentioned earlier, to really make our website more visible and to find ways that we can get information out there. We do have putting together some resources that we send out to the community around mental health or mental health crisis support, whether through social media or just through emails, so that folks know where to go to get resources as well. So for this year, we are focusing on becoming more of a hub, whereby when you move to Worcester, you can go to the city website and know what's where and be able to find it easily. And that has been challenging. So it's another focus for us this year to ensure that we have things in specific places for our residents to be able to access them as well. In regards to mental health, as most of you know, May was Mental Health Awareness Month. So we did send out some information around that, and the genesis of putting these booklets together really was for us to ensure that we have a good understanding of what Worcester has to offer in terms of resources. We have come to the end of this presentation. Do you have any questions?
We might need to update. We might need to update this before we put it out, Jen, with the CHL still being on there, and as we find out more information on the transition of services and programs.
Sounds good.
You know, I think that your point about hiring a communications person is a really good one. Because, you know, I got to be honest, I don't really understand why certain things appear on my Facebook or my Instagram feeds. I don't know where they come from. I don't know why they appear, but sometimes they're garbagey and sometimes they're incredibly useful. So if we didn't rely on people to go to the city website, but instead we're able to do what other people seem to do to let them know we're coming to you with this because you might have an interest in it, that seems like it'd be a great idea.
Yes, it will be for sure. Because I think sometimes we tend to be experts in everything, but having somebody who is focused on that one piece of communication will go a long way. So if you are looking to, no, go ahead.
I'm sorry, no, just wanted to add that the city has a communications department. However, because of the extended need for not only the Division of Public Health, but also Health and Human Services, we have made the case to have our own. And so that is what Jen's referring to.
Cool.
And Randy, I think what you get on your feed is what you have viewed in the past.
Oh, was that it? Thanks.
That's how that works.
Appreciate it. I should go to more child summits and then I would have gotten it.
So we'll be happy to send out information to Patricia to share with all of you as we have events and other things happening within public health. But at this point, feel free to use your phone to scan this QR code and put in your information and be able to get information from us in real time as well. To join our to be part of our partners. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to ask. But thanks for having us.
All right, anybody?
I don't have a
Thank you
question,
both.
but I have a comment. I apologize for the music in the background. It's from the outside, but I feel very strongly about this as a recent graduate of Worcester Public Schools. I genuinely do believe that there should be, and there has to be ways in which resources can actually be extended and reach younger students. And I applaud you for the work that you do. Thank you for coming to speak with us today. I just really believe that there should be ways in which collaborations within the schools can be really extended, just so resources can actually reach students and also create meaningful impact. Thank you for coming to speak with us today.
Thank you.
I just had a quick comment as well. Thank you so much for this presentation and you know, just talking about all the work you guys are doing over there. I work in a high school, not in Worcester, but I do a substance use screening where I interview students one-on-one about their substance use. And we ask, for students that report no use at all, we ask why. And we hear a lot of exactly what you all were saying. They talk about their family, they talk about their personal beliefs, they talk about religion is a big one that comes up, sports, and having, experience with family members that have had substance use and not wanting to go down the same path. So I really appreciate that you are putting the focus on the positive and on those protective factors, because I'm just a big proponent on, I think we do a lot of like reacting to a problem when it's already there. Sometimes not enough on like changing those conditions that are creating these problems in the first place. So I really love the preventative work you all are doing, and really interested in finding out more about that framework. So thank you again.
Thank you so much.
And I would just say thank you again for the presentation, to echo what everyone else said there. And if there's an opportunity for, especially me here on Lincoln Street with the programming we do with Coach Doug Hill and all that program there, please let us know. If it's coming up to talk with the youth there, he had 43 kids in there today, doing programming. So, if there's an opportunity for you to come up, please come up, talk to the youth. Let's engage together there, because that's how we make the difference. Thank you again.
Sounds good. Thank you. We're on Lincoln Street. I'm sorry.
So I'm at St. Bernard's Church on Lincoln Street. So it's 236 Lincoln Street.
So is that the Green Hill Neighborhood Association?
That's right by that area there. Yeah. So it's
okay.
Yeah.
We're coming. Yes, for sure. I think I reached out to Winfred, so we'll be there.
Oh, God bless you. Oh, Winnie. Oh, Winnie. I'm missing her meeting right now, so she's cursing my name right now because I'm at this meeting, but it's not my fault. Patricia changed the meeting date, so it's not me. It's all on you.
Yes. We're all afraid of winning, that's for sure.
Exactly.
All right, wonderful. And if you need each other's emails, maybe Patricia could facilitate that so that you can get some direct contact with one another. I also just wanted to thank you both. This was fascinating. It's things that we don't know about generally. And it's things that we do think we have a role in educating ourselves as well as the greater Worcester community about. And if we don't know about it and we care deeply, then I'm sure we're not alone in not knowing the complexity of the services that you provide and the depth of goodness that you're providing. So thank you for sharing that all with us. And we appreciate very much that you both came and made a wonderful presentation to us. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We were a little nervous because we thought you maybe think, oh, maybe they provide direct services. We're like, no, we're very prevention focused. But I'm happy that this presentation was well received. Thanks again for having us.
Not sure we were sophisticated enough to have any suppositions, but thank you so much for teaching us what you do.
Yeah, but I think community engagement and being at these kind of tables and talking about our work is something that we continue to do and want to do more of, because I think a lot of people don't know what public health is, and it takes a long time to see the results of our work, but it is important work and it does work. I want to make sure that everybody's aware of it.
For sure.
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night.
Do we exit? Do we leave? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
You got the nod of the head from Patricia. Okay. All right. There's Liz. Elizabeth O'Callaghan, our great former vice chair for a century or two, who just did wonderful work for all of us. Thank you for being here with us, and thank you for presenting. I do have to tell you, I didn't know how much I would get to present today on the complaint that was filed by the National Science of Mental Illness of Central Mass and others about the police department's response. But I was reading this thing late into the night last night, and I just have to tell everybody in our commission, especially you, Liz, that that they quoted our commission, the work that was done by our commission, in two separate places in the lawsuit. One was one of the police chiefs, deputy police chiefs, made a presentation on mental health services provided by the police. And the other was about you directly, Liz, when you presented to us what you thought would be good for the police department and the community at large to be where it might be missing and might be a better approach to things. And they quoted you directly. So I just want, sometimes I'm just going to say this out loud. Sometimes you wonder when we're doing all this work, if we end up to be purely advisory, is it worth it, the commitment that we're all making to educate ourselves and try to move the ball forward in a certain direction? But when a lawsuit draws upon the work of the Human Rights Commission, the knowledge that we elicited and the knowledge particularly Elizabeth O'Callaghan presented and incorporated that into a legal document to try to bring change to our city and our society, the work we're doing is having some effect. So I wanted to do that as by way of introduction of Elizabeth O'Callaghan, our old vice chair, and then ask Liz to please present, if you could, on what you presented to us once before, but it was sort of rushed near the end of your term. And we would like to have a more fully presented and thoughtful and received understanding on our part of all the different things that you were saying that are now so in the public eye at moments of decision that we're all trying to make. So welcome and thank you for coming.
Thank you. It's nice to be back and see some familiar faces. I'm always shocked at when I come across my name somewhere at that, like, from something that we talked about 3 years ago, and it's good to know. That's really bittersweet to know that the work is still moving forward based on what we've put out into the world. So hi everyone. For those who don't know me, I was on the commission starting in like January 2017. I became the clerk probably in July of that year, maybe August, and then eventually became the vice chairperson sometime in 2021, and served until about May of last year, I think was our last meeting. I continue to be a resource for everybody here because I think more than anything else, and certainly not intentionally, I became sort of like a historian more than anything else for this commission. In other places as well, I've had people reach out to me asking for like historical documents or public records, or like, what meeting did we talk about this 5 years ago? And somehow I have it all still. I've created some searchable files, and so I've used a lot of that to put together some information, because some of it as Randy and I were talking about, just sort of like the history of like leading up to where we are today. And this stemmed from when I joined the commission, recognizing when I asked some questions that all the other commissioners, as they came on the commission, had asked the exact same questions that I had asked. So I know, Randy, that's not what you wanted me to talk about, but I just wanted to throw out there that like that is a thing that the commission, and probably all of the commissions and boards have struggled with, of just like, how do we get the information passed on to the next group of people? So I'll just throw it there. I continue to be a resource for folks who are wondering, like, where did this policy come from? Where did this recommendation come from? Why do we do this thing this way? Why do we say this at the start of the meetings? Because I probably have it in a searchable PDF somewhere. I'm happy to speak to it. So I had Randy tell me, and everybody tell me if this is helpful. What I had put together was sort of some background information for how we ended up here in this place, as a way of like leading up to talking about that that policy we talked about in the spring of last year. Would that be helpful if I start with that background piece?
Sure. Just mention what the policy is that you did the background info it's now so ripe.
Okay.
To further discuss. So
this is on the WPD's emergency mental health policy. And one of the open documents I have here, I have the number policy it is, but that's the name of the policy. Okay, good to go forward?
Please.
Okay. All right. So this kind of came about, what happened was like a dovetailing of two separate initiatives. So we had the Mayor's Mental Health Task Force that Jana Turchik had me join in around 2018. I began reporting back to HRC on just the information that was coming out of there because some of our work was aligning. I'm a mental health counselor and behavioral analyst by training, so it made sense for me to be the representative, so to speak. And while that work was happening, we were also doing a lot of work to support the Worcester Police Department in a number of different ways to ensure that they were aligned with the human rights policy for the city of Worcester. So we had talked about things like CIT, which is the Crisis Intervention Team. So way back when, they had 5 trained officers. Over the course of a few years, they believe had gotten up to 40. They had a mission to bring that number up to everybody. They were hoping to have everybody trained in CIT. It's a 40-hour training. I'm looking for the note on it to make sure I don't misspeak. It's a 40-hour training that CHL was running. I don't know who is running that now to ensure that officers are continuing to be trained. That might be a question worth asking WPD since CHL is abruptly closed. But that's been one area because as things like the racial equity audit, the DOJ report, and other things had come up over the years, complaints filed, settlements reached by the city. There was a settlement with the city of Louisville, with the DOJ, with their police department. It was all around how police interactions went with people experiencing mental health crises. Also people with disabilities who maybe weren't able to communicate in line with the expectations of the officer, leading to some really unfortunate circumstances. So that's where our work started to align. So we've been doing a lot of work to try to support them. The other thing that went along with that is that in October 2023, I want to make sure I have the right date, WPD created a policy review committee to look at and improve its policies and develop new policies as necessary. So there's hundreds of them if you're familiar and have looked over WPD policies, and it's too much work for just a couple of people. And so they formed this committee. They asked WPD to help, and they would send along the policies that they were looking at that month. And so every month or so, we got a couple that we would review, make some recommendations, and share back with them. One was the emergency mental health policy, along with some other ones. We had English as a second language was one of the policies. We had use of force. There was a lot of work there. There was a sexual assault policy that we did, and a few other ones in there. I believe that committee has since disbanded in the last couple years, but the ultimate goal that WPD had at the time was they wanted to get through every one of their policies, and they wanted HRC to help. So I know, Randy, this is veering into my dream of trying to get information to current members of HRC, just so you guys have background, so that you kind of know what we've already talked about already, and things we were working on in the past, things we were partnering with WPD on, and that was a big one. But in the process of that, we were able to do a lot of work around assisting them with how WPD addresses mental health crises. So some areas that were identified as an issue were the fact that first, at one point there was only 5 CIT officers on at a time, and that's one barrier. There's, I believe, still a shortage, and at one point we identified that there were some huge coverage gaps in the schedule where there would be no CIT trained officers available. So what was happening? Yeah.
Can I ask you about those CIT trained officers?
Sure.
So in trying to read up on it before tonight's meeting, it seemed to me, so we all know that there was a pilot project with Community Health Link where certain people that were mental health people would go out with police officers to respond. I think they went out with them. I don't think they went out ahead of them, and I don't think they went out behind them. I think they went out with them to respond to mental health crises requests. And then I was reading that these crisis intervention officers, if I got this right, this is what I'm asking. Father Jonathan, you may know as well. Those people are trained for sure in mental health, but they don't go out at the time of interaction. They go out afterwards to ask people, how did this work out for you? Or they do kind of work that's not on the spot. Something's going down, and we need somebody there that knows mental health as well as policing. What exactly do crisis intervention officers do?
I would just say, like, I think it's a both and situation at times, right? And perhaps because of my relationship, as a chaplain, it might be a little bit different. On Lincoln Street, I know if there are issues of mental health, behavioral issues that come up there, it is easier for me to reach out to perhaps those officers that I know that are dealing with that have built those relationships, and they're able to engage with them in a very different way because they're more familiar to them. And so it's easy for me to say, okay, I've noticed this situation here, and it's becoming, so I can talk to those officers that I know that are part of that. But I think if there's, an issue that arises and there's like an emergency phone call, they're just going to come. The officers are going to come, and not just those officers, particularly who might be more engaged in that field.
Yeah, I learned one time I went to St. Paul's and I met two officers, and they sort of said that, what happens, or I met another officer who wasn't dressed like an officer really. He had like a short sleeve polo shirt. He didn't have a hat on, didn't have a formal uniform. And he said, I'm one of the people that's supposed to go out. But what happens sometimes is the police officer closest to the call goes, and they get there before I do, and they may look more intimidating or not know as much how to handle the situation, but they were closer. And then when I show up, the informality that I'm trying to use to seem less intimidating doesn't happen because the interaction already began.
And I would say, based upon what I've seen when calls have come in from other areas, they do the de-escalation. I've been here on Lincoln Street for 10 years. The de-escalation tactics have increased drastically, and so so the officers who are in this area, who are assigned to this route, they try to get to know the individuals where they're at, and so because there tends to be a lot of repeat at times, and so they try to build that relationship. So whether it is someone particularly assigned to this or the officer just on call, it's a familiar face, like, okay, how do we de-escalate the situation here and move on? And that's what I've noticed here on Lincoln Street.
Okay, Liz, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for the background. Yeah, and that was one of the things that officers had repeatedly told us over the years, that sometimes it works out well where it's an officer that already has a rapport with somebody, but one of the overarching things that I had heard over the years working with WPD is they would say to me that we feel like social workers and we're not social workers, but we are constantly put in a position of having to do the work of a trained mental health professional. And there's so much need out there. We're not equipped for it. That's not what we're out there trying to do. And we welcome any sort of support or collaboration around this. And so that sort of drove the work of HRC going into the direction of, how can we support these officers who are out there doing, wearing all these different hats and, going into some really risky, complex, difficult situations that they're managing every day. And so I want to say it was 2021, we started looking at this CAHOOTS model out of Eugene, Oregon, and it was a co-responder model, which is what we ended up with. After the mayor's mental health task force took it up, there was a subcommittee on, it's like a crisis response team subcommittee. We looked at a couple different models. We did a SWOT analysis, and eventually came up with the co-response model. There was a different model where, like, the dispatch could decide to send out a social worker without an officer, and that's I don't think what the pilot program ended up doing.
So when you say we came up with a co-response model, who's we?
Sorry, we on the Mayor's Mental Health Task Force, where we were, and this is where, like, for a few years we were doing sort of parallel work so that we were making sure it wasn't overlapping, but working together. So I was doing that work on the Mayor's Mental Health Task Force and then reporting back updates to the Human Rights Commission.
And was that a long process of coming up and agreeing on the co-response model?
Yeah, it was really thoughtful over the course of, I want to say it was maybe 9 months or so. Maybe it was longer than that, because I remember doing that work in 2020 and the RFP deadline was 2021. So it definitely was not a quick, like, we met once and decided. There was a lot of people involved in that. And then work came out of that to then develop the RFP based on what we had come up with. So I would say it was a thoughtful process that looked at and evaluated the strengths of each of the different potential models out there. And it's not that there's only one right way to do this. There's probably different needs in different communities that would lend itself to choosing a different model over what they did. But I hope that answers your question, that it wasn't like a quick snap process.
And does that imply that a mental health worker and a police officer are going to go together? Is that what a co-response model is?
Yeah.
Okay. And how much of that is happening at the police department, if you know?
I do, and it's unfortunate that when we met back in 2023 with the police, Deputy Chief McGinn had said that it had gotten underway and it was going to continue into the following year. It seems that that's not happening anymore. I'm not sure if it's due that it just wasn't renewed, but the goal was that it was going to start off small, as a pilot, and then it was going to expand.
If I could just ask one question, is that because, do you think also with the lack of funding with the current administration, cutting with a lot of fundings cut for mental health issues, behavioral health issues there, lack of social workers being able to get paid to do the job as well?
That is, it certainly did not help. I think the issues predated that, and if there was any hope of reviving the program, those dreams have probably been dashed by additional funding cuts that have happened. So I want to say by last year we had found out that it hadn't continued.
So when it was going on, sorry, Liz, when it was going on, Community Health Link and the police going out together, a lot of people recognize that it was pretty limited program. The hours weren't that extensive, but it was a start, right?
Yeah.
But then it stopped. Does anybody know who was funding this that stopped? Because this was long before President Trump was reelected and federal money seems harder to get. Long before that, this thing stopped.
Yes.
Who was paying for Community Health Link that the funding stopped?
So I'm so glad you're helping me use all my notes, because I took notes on that tonight to make sure I had it. So it was the initial RFP was for $1 million. It was the city of Worcester that had put it out, and I'd have to go back to see if there were any grants involved. So I don't know, where necessarily all of that funding came from, but it was the city of Worcester that had developed the RFP.
So the city of Worcester was paying, but they may have been getting the money from someone else to be able to pay that they stopped getting, or they may have made a decision to just stop funding it. We don't know.
Yeah, and it's speculation on my part, just from not, because I'm a mental health professional first, and not someone who necessarily is set up to get grants. I'm trying to remember the name of the person that secures grants. That's never been my role, and so I don't have as much focus on that. More so than they
And you know what, Randy, I can look back in my notes, but I think that we talked about this in the police meeting last summer. And again, I have to look back, so don't quote me on this, but I feel like they were saying that it was initially funded through what you were saying, Liz, and then some of that might have run out and they had found a way to continue it for maybe another year. And then at that time he was saying, but I don't know that we're going to be able to continue it further. But I can see if in my notes from last year if I wrote the specifics on that, on what they were saying, but I do remember talking about it.
I kind of remember it the same way. They got grants and they could stopped continuing to get those grants. And then I think that's when they decided to end the whole thing. By the way, while we're talking about this, the police are going to present in August, and we kind of missed the boat on like preparing questions for the police, like Ellen and Liz, like you were so good at. We kind of missed the boat on being able to send that to them. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to all just ask what questions we would like to ask at the meeting in August. So if anybody would like to start preparing in their mind or on paper that they can write down to remind themselves to ask the questions they would like to ask in August to the police, please do so, since we didn't kind of do the preparation work that the past chair and vice chair would do more diligently and appropriately. We kind of messed that up here. So it'll be on all of us to ask a few questions in August if we would like to. Okay, Liz, please continue. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. And thank you so much, Carrie, for jumping on the funding piece, just because it's just not the thing that I attend to when I'm looking at work like this. So yeah, it's unfortunate that's run out. I thought that we were told last year or the year before that the WPD had hired a social worker, and I'm not sure that that's still accurate, or if that was ongoing or it was something temporary, and that there was only one, which is part of, again, the continuing issue that which we've worked to try to help WPD overcome, is like, how do you fill in the gaps in the schedule when that social worker isn't available? And I think the goal has always been to scale up with all of these projects. And that's just never happened. Another example where this has happened is the quality of life task force. If you remember, Randy, that I think it was this past year when they came and spoke to us, they said that they had hired a social worker. The social worker had left, and the position had remained vacant for a number of months. Out of curiosity leading up to this meeting, just because I had thought about it, I was looking for if there was a job posting for a social worker for the quality of life task force and couldn't find any job listings. So I don't know if perhaps that's been filled, but that was a concern the quality of life task force had for a while, that position had gone unfilled, and it made it very difficult to meet a lot of the mental health needs and case management needs of the population that they were serving. But
I was just to add on, I was informally told, very informally, so I think it's true, but who knows, just somebody talking, saying that they hired 2 social workers at the police department now.
That is phenomenal. I'd love to hear that. One follow-up item for later this year when you meet with the quality of life task force is see if they've hired a social worker for them, because Evis does really great work there, but I know that they were, again, they're in a position where that's not really their job, but they are trying to meet these mental health needs that are in the community in the absence of the trained person that's supposed to be there to fill that gap. So that was one way that we were hoping to support the police department, in terms of, if you have a trained mental health professional on site with the police officer at the time of a crisis, you have a person there to be able to consult, to step in if it's safe to do so, and hopefully prevent things from going awry, right? That's the whole idea in terms of like prevention of mental health crises turning into something that they don't need to, that are either more dangerous, that are traumatic, that become more unsafe, that become more escalated. That is the role of the social worker that is responding along with the police officer, and also with the CIT officers, to hopefully de-escalate is the goal there. So recognizing that there's all these gaps, we then looked at what can we do to ensure that the entire police force is trained and equipped when they go to a scene and they don't know that it's going to be a mental health crisis, or maybe the social worker is not available, or there's not a CIT officer available, and it's someone that they don't know, what can we do universally to support officers there? And that's when the policy work came in. So you just pull that up. So the original policy had been last updated in 2011. And there's been a lot of work done in I think both fields in terms of bringing in what we call trauma-informed care, right? We talked about like trauma-informed policing, or as sort of the parallel term. And so recognizing that it wasn't updated since 2011, that was something that the police department targeted. It is policy and procedure number 830. And it lays out the purpose. It talks about definitions of mental illness, involuntary commitment, detention types, and then it lays out some procedures. Let me just pull you guys back up. Too many windows open here. There we go.
Liz, can I ask you, because if I remember right, did you respond? I know that use of force, you responded for our commission when the police asked us for input. And was it also you who responded to the 830 policy and procedure?
Yes.
It was. And I'm sure you made some suggestions. And did they accept or change any of their policy or procedure according to what you suggested and we suggested as a Human Rights Commission?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. And I guess you're going to tell us what were
Yes.
some of the things that you suggested that they didn't incorporate in spite of your advocacy?
Yes. Okay.
Our advocacy, really.
Yeah, so some things that were missing from the original policy, and again, it was updated back in 2011, so it was due for some revisions, but that I did not see added to any new version. So the recommendations include utilizing wording that reflects norms regarding someone experiencing a mental health crisis, such as adopting wording from the International Association of Chiefs of Police. For background, there were a number of model policies and sources, and your previous presenter had said, why reinvent the wheel? For some of these, where there are people already have expertise in this area. And so we looked at a lot of best practices and just said, here, take a look at these policies from bodies like the International Association of Chiefs of Police, and, adopt language that matches that. And there's a whole list of best practice policies that I had included in these recommendations. Some other ones are law enforcement agency certification from Post. I had mentioned St. Bernard's Catholic Church, Our Lady of Providence Parish Clergy Police Partnership, Massachusetts Roadmap for Behavioral Health Reform. So there's a whole bunch of things in there, and also the DOJ Louisville settlement for behavioral health. So when I talk about adopting language from these policies, that's what I'm referencing. And for anyone who is curious, this is all written in the April 2025 meeting minutes. I made a recommendation to add a statement at the top of page 2, and it says dealing with individuals who are known or suspected to be mentally ill. That indicates that that may be what's going on, because that piece was missing. I also made a recommendation to highlight, for the purpose of increasing understanding and efficiency of care, that DPH, which licenses oversees ambulance services, has issued regulations to authorize ambulance services upon the direction of an ED physician to drop individuals off at CBHCs that have a DPH. And I'm so sorry, this was a quote from the BCBS toolkit that I'll have to pull up. I think I was much more prepared the first time, where I had all the things open and in front of me, so I apologize. So there was a quote from there, and that was at the bottom of page 14, section 3. So I think in the official minutes, I had just said, please reference this. I had made a recommendation to incorporate information about the co-response model and about mobile crisis services in its current form that's now available to WPD. Of course, CHL has closed. For those of you who don't know, CHL for a long time did have a separate mobile crisis that that they could call even before the RFP went out. There were some areas that overlap, but may become their own, that could become their own policy for developmental and intellectual disabilities. That is something that's just absent from a lot of policies where people with intellectual and developmental disabilities have been severely impacted, and some additional specificity and visibility is really necessary, given what's happened in our city in the past with this population. So the recommendation was to include considerations or just develop a new policy if one doesn't already exist for interacting with people who are diagnosed with developmental and intellectual disabilities. And they often have different needs than someone who's experiencing acute mental health emergency, but there's also a lot of overlap. So it's really important for police officers to understand that sometimes people with developmental and intellectual disabilities also experience mental health crises, and some consideration for knowing how to respond to them is necessary. And I had made a bunch of notes to myself, but the how invisible this community is, and how they report they feel when we have these kinds of conversations. All right.
Liz,
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if you could address this, or Father Jonathan, if you could. I was reading about that there's a lot of trainings that police can take and often do, but most are not mandatory. They don't mandatorily have to take a lot of the things that you're talking about, Liz, a lot of the mental health trainings, but they're available. Like while they're doing training in academy, then they have to do some. But once they join the force, it's optional, not mandatory, about these trainings. Does anybody know more about that?
So we should definitely ask, I think, the police in August, but I do, from what I understand, they have a lot more mandatory trainings dealing with these issues, and a lot is being, because I hear obviously the officers talking about that there. I think they're doing, and you can see that I truly do believe with the younger officers that I see that are coming out of the academy, the dealings with individuals with mental health issues is now very different. You know, so you see that training that is taking place, of course, within the academy, but also just talking to the officers, they have a lot more trainings, mandatory trainings they have to be doing each year. And I believe this is one of the areas, don't quote me on that, but we should definitely ask the police in August there, because I think there was a change with it.
And I do actually, I found my notes on those related questions from last year, which addresses some of the things we've asked, as well as that. So I can just briefly touch on those. So when talking about the co-response program, Randy, you had asked about the pilot program, and Chief Saucier had said it was still in place under a grant, but they were expecting to lose the funding. And then Deputy Chief McGinn had reported the prior city manager had funded a similar program in 2020. That one had gone away, but then the crisis intervention teams with clinicians were subsequently developed. So at the time, they had a team that included 4 officers and a mental health clinician on the WPD. It does say that the CIT officer training is voluntary. They did have 85 officers that had taken the training as of the meeting last year. And then in regards to kind of like the nature of these trainings and their effectiveness, they just talked about how time is kind of a barrier. A lot of these things are on video training, and they really wish to do more in-person trainings and have more time and flexibility to do that, because they felt like that type of training was more impactful. I think that's about all that was in that, the main highlights of of those notes.
Thanks.
Thank you. I remember that conversation, and it made me think of one other thing that came up was in September 2020, we had another conversation with the police department about training. So it may be worthwhile to go back and look at the September 2020 meeting minutes where we talked about like what's mandatory, what's not, where are the barriers to increasing access to trainings around this. And the former police chief, Steve Sargent, had said that he had a goal to make the CIT training at some point mandatory, or his exact words were to have every single officer trained in that. He wasn't sure how he was going to get there, but his goal was to continue to expand the number of officers that had taken that training.
Liz, if you could send us all a reminder to ask that question, because you're so good at that, please do that. Please.
As our historian.
Yes. One of the things that I was wanting to say tonight, understanding that I'm here for a specific task, was just that I have all of this information in this Google Drive, and it's all public record that I had sort of aggregated and put together. I made like searchable PDF minutes. I took from there, I made a timeline of just meeting highlights. I've made a list of motions, and I just have all of this sitting in a Google Drive. So please reach out if you, and I'm happy to share that with you. Because yeah, it's all there, and I feel like I'm cheating a little bit when I go back and someone's like, how do you remember that from 2019? It's like, I just control it.
Liz GPT, that's it.
Yeah. So and I apologize, I was sort of stumbling over myself earlier when I was talking about the first recommendation, and it's because there was this, when I was pasting it into my current notes, just the formatting got a little messed up. So the first recommendation, just because I feel like I wasn't following what I was saying, and I'm sure nobody else was to update the mental health policy to both updated language and practices from those. And the quote was, or the title of it was, responding to persons experiencing a mental health crisis. So there is something in that from the IACP, which is the International Association of Chiefs of Police, that is titled Responding to Persons Experiencing a Mental Health Crisis. And then further to include in any update language that acknowledges that individuals diagnosed with a mental health disorder are statistically far more likely to be a victim of crime than to pose a danger to others. And the context of that research, I'm remembering now, was that the language in the initial policy really talks about, it highlights the dangerousness, the potential danger, and talks about things like dangerousness of people who are experiencing mental health crises, which is true. But when we, part of our role is to look at things like bias, and that we are following the human rights policy for the city of Worcester, and that was one of those areas where maybe a slight language change can shift the mentality of responding officers.
That language was also in the lawsuit, that people experiencing mental health crises are more likely to be the victim of violence than the perpetrator of violence.
Yeah.
That was in the lawsuit. That may be true or not true, I don't know, but it is definitely a claim that people on that side of the issue want to be considered.
Yeah, it is. It's known. When we look at the data on that, and it's when we do mental health training with like direct support staff and people we work with, that to help folks understand the vulnerability that people experiencing major mental health diagnoses or experiencing a mental health crisis experience, that they are much more vulnerable than we tend to portray in greater society. And when you read the 2011 version of policy number 830, it really reflects that sort of broader view that society has, that we should regard people experiencing mental health challenges with suspicion and fear, and that's not helpful for anybody involved in trying to de-escalate a situation.
Yeah, they gave a lot of statistics in the lawsuit from that same research maybe you're drawing upon, that said that this is a misconception that the general public has, and that's incorporated into the generalized mentality when people look at the issue. And they had some statistics to back up just the same claim that you're making, that oftentimes, much more oftentimes, that people with suffering mental illness are victims of violence, not perpetrators of it.
Yeah, and the sort of piece leading from that is in looking at it holistically. So I'm trained in a de-escalation curriculum that we use in our agency. And when you are thinking in that kind of, I'll just say old school manner, you're not thinking about necessarily de-escalation, right? You're thinking about how is this, you're already anticipating that it's going to become more hostile and dangerous, and sometimes it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so when you start to put in language around de-escalation, you sort of facilitate better more positive outcomes for everybody involved. So that's the sort of idea behind it. And we talked about expanding policy. I just pulled up the minutes directly to make sure that I didn't miss anything from the notes that I had pulled up, because the formatting just didn't carry over very well. So the final wording for that recommendation for the third one was to develop a policy to guide interactions with individuals with developmental and intellectual disabilities who may experience difficulties with communication, impulse control, and/or police directives, with the request that this policy be centered around a co-response model that integrates and leverages the expertise of the trained mental health professionals that are also responding. And just knowing that if you have somebody with a communication deficit and they're already in a crisis and their communication skills are already less available to them because their prefrontal cortex isn't at its full capacity because they're in a fight or flight response, the way you might respond to that person is very different from when they might be at baseline, or if they didn't have a disability to begin with. So that kind of training can be really helpful for any officers like responding to a crisis for somebody who is in that population. And then the motion included a request that the EODEI provide the WPD with links to the specific resources that were cited in the minutes of that meeting. And then finally, just circling back to the second one, we had specified asking them to either expand the current policy or develop a new policy to address police interactions with individuals who are victims or witnesses of a crime outside of sexual assault and or domestic violence context, because that already has a whole separate pathway there, to leverage community resources in the form of expertise of trained mental health professionals in supporting a trauma-informed approach. The context there, I don't know if anybody was here the last couple times that Nikki Bell from Lyft came to talk to us. I don't think Lyft exists anymore. I know she's working on some other projects, but in the times that she's come and talked to us over the years, she talked about how even some of the CIT trained officers, without the lived experience or without having this very open conversation, may not realize that there are some things that are happening that are not trauma informed. And it's not anything that's happening intentionally, but say, officers standing behind someone who was just the victim of an assault, or standing and blocking a doorway. When we look at trauma-informed care, those are elements of, safety that like a mental health provider might recognize. And there's probably some knowledge transfer that could happen around that. And so leveraging those resources in the community when somebody is a victim of a crime, such as the police clergy partnership, could be really beneficial for everyone involved. So if you think of other things that can happen to somebody, right? Let's say somebody is a witness to a murder. That's a really traumatic thing to experience. And if you think about what happens when you're involved in something like that, you call the police, come. The job of the police is to do the, secure the scene, interview the witnesses, do the detective work, but they're not there to respond to the needs of the witness that's involved, right? That could be a need that's filled by either maybe someone from the clergy who has the prerequisite mental health training, or a trained mental health professional who's co-responding. And so that was the context of that. Reverend Aaron Payson had talked a lot about that, about, if someone completed a suicide and one of the family members had found them, that's a really traumatic experience that person is having, and the police are not there to help that person connect with resources or get through that trauma or minimize trauma, right? That's not their role and it shouldn't have to be. And so there may be other resources in the community that can come in and assist if we, if we collaborate and network. So I think that was the majority of it. There's certainly a lot of overlap with the use of force policy, which is a different topic, but there's a lot of overlap in terms of like people who might be experiencing trauma who then need to be involved in some sort of use of force. And so I wanted to just highlight that as a separate but related piece of work that we had done around the same time.
And as well, like there's a lot of interaction, like the same kind of issues often come up with domestic violence calls. And so a lot of the same kind of training and orientation would affect not just mental and behavioral health issues, but as you said, Liz, things that are adjacent to them that also require perhaps a change in orientation of mindset of what the best way to de-escalate. And as Father Jonathan said, it seemed that the younger officers are being much more trained and much more interested and acutely aware of the interest of the benefits of de-escalation going forward.
And just a note to that too, obviously, understanding mental health issues has changed drastically over the years. So an officer from 20 years ago versus today, totally different, because of the world in which we live, and I think there's a lot who have to adapt to the realities of what's taking place nowadays. And I think we're going to see more of it.
I'm so glad to hear that, because one of the things that just going way, way back to when we first started to review the BOPS data and have the police come talk to us way back before I even first started, that the whole reason that we started working so closely with WPD is to increase trust in the community. I don't know if everyone remembers all the way back to 2015, we had, I think the race dialogues, right, with WPD. There was a lot of violence that was happening in the community around then. There was a recognition that there was mistrust in the community toward the WPD and police officers in general, and a move toward the idea of community policing and how we can help build that bridge between the community and WPD. And there was a lot of programs that came out of that, that WPD had done with the city, and we were part of understanding like what would help people feel safe working with police officers. So this goes all the way back to that. And so if officers are better equipped to know how to de-escalate and how to help people feel safe and how to help people feel like they really are there to serve and protect and meet the needs of the community, and making sure that there are community resources available working alongside police officers, that maybe we can work on building that trust.
I think a lot of that too is self-awareness, right? Like, everyone goes through trauma, right? I mean, whether it's an officer or us, we all go through trauma. And I think there was a mentality for so long that really eats away at the soul of just push it down, push it down, push it down. You've seen this, this, and this. You've seen the worst of the worst, just push it down, push it down. And so that obviously then has an effect. So I think with the Chief Sassia especially, we've seen this new movement of like, okay, we got to take care of ourselves as well. We have new clinicians, we have on-site academy. So when we have a traumatic experience, how are we dealing with that as an officer? How are we saying, okay, immediately talk about it. Don't just push it in, And I think that helps to alleviate then the tensions on the street, because we're realizing we have our own issues. Mm-hmm. And now other people have their issues as well. And now I have the tools, because when they go off for training or whatnot, they're all self-care, rather. They're getting the tools to deal with their own issues and the trauma that they've experienced. And I think now they're able to better deliver those tools to others, or at least have that greater understanding of, okay, how do we better de-escalate the situation right now? Because yelling at the top of my lungs because I've just saw this, and this accident is not going to help the situation. So I think overall we've grown so much as a society with mental health issues. It's going to help further in the future.
That's
Yeah,
great.
that's-
And it's so great to hear that because Commissioner Hopkins was very, very concerned about first responders, especially police officers, not receiving that support, either because of those the kind of old war beliefs or because the resources weren't there. I think that might be a good question for WPD about what those resources are, because we know that there's a high rate of PTSD and acute stress disorder in police officers. And if you think about what they are doing every day, it makes a lot of sense to have something like secondary PTSD because of things they've witnessed or heard from victims of crimes reporting to them or what have you. And we know one of the core symptoms of PTSD is hypervigilance, right? And so when your job involves high levels of risk, or at any given moment you can't predict when that's going to happen, it's very easy to see danger maybe where there isn't because you are struggling with PTSD or an acute stress response. And so I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah, it is great to know. We also should probably mention that in another adjacent area is the Department of Justice, when it talked about the police department's work with sex workers. And you talk about a breakdown in trust. And Police Chief Saucier seems to have incorporated all those changes that were suggested to try to stop the kinds of enforcement activities that would lead to abuses and a breakdown in trust with the sex worker community. And you talk about trauma. I mean, those interactions are filled with trauma. And it's nice to know that there's going to be a new orientation that has been applied to that, both a difference in policy practice and a respect for the mental needs of the participants in these interactions. So I think it's good all around that major changes have been made that have been needed, major league, like real big changes, and that they have been made. So that's good too.
Yeah. If there was one like big dream that I had as a mental health professional and long time member of the commission, it would be for the development of some policy that addresses or talks about trauma-informed policing. Those are out there. I feel like I was yelling into the void for years about it, and I think there's more openness now, and maybe this is the time where someone will say, yeah, actually, that's a great idea. Let's work on developing that policy, and also to take another look at this conversation from last year and these recommendations, because they really were made in earnest in the hope that people in their one of the most difficult moments of their lives won't have additional trauma on top of it, because they have an officer responding that's been trained in a really comprehensive, thoughtful, trauma-informed policy that will make that horrible situation not worse on top of what's already going on. So those are like my big dreams for HRC and for the work with WPD, is for something around this mental health policy, again, policy 830, the use of force policy, and something around trauma-informed policing being adopted and inclusive of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, because they've just are not part of any of these conversations, and really, really should be, because they're really disproportionately impacted.
Well, Liz, you certainly were a woman ahead of your time, and you certainly brought our committee along with you. And now these issues are in the papers all the time. Lawsuits are being filed, and all the issues that you asked us to address as a community last year are now being addressed as a community this year. So we all want to thank you very much for all that work that you did in this area, in this field, to try to educate us all on what the reality of the situation is, and what the possibilities could be for a different orientation working better. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for having me back. Is there anything else I can answer that we didn't talk about?
teach us how to find everything in PDFs and all that stuff there. If you could just give that, maybe in a few months, you could just give us a lesson on how to do that. That'd be good.
Absolutely. I'm always happy to show folks that. I'm always happy to share anything I have. Yeah, like I said, please reach out anytime. Pat has my contact information, and I really care about the work of this commission and what's going on in our community. And thank you to all of you for continuing to move the work forward.
Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks so much for coming. We appreciate it so much. Yeah.
All right. I'll sign off if you guys are all set with me.
Yeah. Patricia, I think unless somebody has something else, it's time for a motion to
real
end the
quick,
meeting.
Randy.
Oh, okay, Drew, thanks.
Just a quick question, because obviously we didn't have the meeting last month, and I wasn't here the previous month because I was very, very sick. Do we have an update on the vacancies, Rob and Guillermo's vacancies that we've been talking about, as well as I don't know if this has been dealt with, because I guess it would have been April, but specifically Randy and Jackie's reappointments or non-reappointments?
Kevin,
Do we have information
and Pat,
about any of those things or all of those things?
Yeah, let me just, before handing it to Kevin or Patricia, whoever wants to take it, Jackie and I very much want to stop serving. We felt like we've served enough, so we would like to stop. And she's less than me, as you can see, is gonna just sort of pitch hit when we need quorum, it seems. And other than that, I'm gonna do this most likely, and Kevin will explain why. Most likely till August. I'm hoping September at worst case scenario, until new people come on. But Kevin, you want to take it away? Pat, somebody?
Yeah, Drew, I'm happy to answer that question. We're in the process now of interviewing folks that are interested in sitting on the commission. I did spoke with Randy on staying as a hangover until we can get those folks. It's important to me that the transition is smooth and we're not losing any of that institutional knowledge. So I do appreciate Randy and other folks as well for staying a little bit longer. But also do consider elections as well too, or those that do want to run in the future as well. The goal is to fill the seats and get everything smooth and up and running again. There's a little challenge as well too. We're trying to do our best to promote, but also, this is voluntary position at the same time. So we're trying to do everything in our power to clear up some of the vacancies. Like I said, we do have a few in the pipeline, so Randy will be holding on until we can get a few more folks on there.
But Kevin, you did mention that we did have a good number of applicants, correct?
Yeah, we do have a good number of applicants, but that doesn't mean that all will sit on there, but we are reviewing them though.
I just also want to check and I guess I haven't checked recently, but last time I checked, it didn't say that we had vacancies on our commission. Has that been updated on the website?
I can hand that over to Pat. Do you want to cover the vacancies on the website?
I don't know what it says on the website. I just go by what I know in my daily.
Well, that's the problem I think we have. If we need candidates and the website says we don't have vacancies, people are probably not applying for something. And I have multiple people that have talked to me asking if they should apply, but then when they go to the website, they see that there are no vacancies. So the assumption is that you guys have enough people in the pipeline and it's full. So I would love to be able to tell people that they can apply. So if that's the case,
I think you should always tell people to apply.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we get that updated on the website as well?
No. Yeah, Drew, I'll talk to the comms team about that. I'll follow up with that. I didn't realize that it wasn't updated on that. We just get the internal list. But in the meantime, if you do have folks that are reaching out to you, do encourage them to apply. I'll work with HR and comms team to make sure that's updated on the website.
That's great. Maybe
the city social media team.
That's what I was going to say. We have a social media team. We should be putting up there that there's 1 million vacancies on all these different places, because I'm sure there's a ton of people who
like and share.
Yeah, Father Jonathan and I will share those posts.
Yeah.
It would be great if we could comment on those posts. That'd be a new and wonderful thing for the city. But we would be able to, if we can at least share it, that would be something we could do.
Yeah, no, definitely social media has been a challenge, but the city is working on that. So as I said, I'll follow up with the director and at least make sure that it's reflected of the most current roster.
Because right now we think, 1, 2, 3 of us are all new as of this past year. And so, no offense, Randy, counting you out for a second, right? If you were gone, Drew and was just two that have the institutional knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Of it all.
I've probably
So,
been
yeah.
pulling Randy for a little longer on that. Just so we're
Yeah,
not
I wouldn't
losing on
even
some of that.
consider myself having a lot of institutional knowledge. I've been here for a year and a half.
Okay, so yeah, so we're all
yeah.
Yeah.
we're all in it together, as they say.
But,
I'm just
you know,
drinking coffee.
First of all, thanks, Drew, for bringing that up. But also, I think that the people who've been here for a year or more, get a chance to see how it works. And from my 3+ years on it, it works in a way that changes according to what the people who are, let's just say, organizing the agenda have different interests according to who they are and what their interests are. And the commission as well has different interests. So it just changes. The format of how we do it is similar and the same, but the topics that come to the fore in public discourse, as well as individuals' interests, change quite a bit. So it just takes different forms according to the people who are here who want to address different issues. And I think that's the way it should be. It's very flexible and encompassing, and the more diversity, the better. So I think it'll probably be fine, just as long as there's some folks who have seen and participated for some period of time to know what the structure looks like a little bit.
I agree with you, Randy. I just, I think problem one that we always have to address is making sure that we can even make quorum. So
yeah, that's the truth.
We gotta have enough people to show up.
I did try reaching out today saying, do we have enough quorum if I don't show up? I'm in the midst of a parish merge of 3 parishes coming together come July 1st. And I was like, so that's why I was in my car driving. I was like, oh my gosh, let me make sure I show up just in case there's not quorum, so
that may be the most
driving.
That's might be the most commonly asked question, actually. So,
yeah. That's something I do want to address, which I hope I'll address at the next meeting. Just attendance and making quorum. And I get it. We all have jobs, but at the end of the day, we did volunteer for this position as well too. And the meetings are the same exact dates, right? So if you have the question, if you want to participate, perhaps this is not for you. We're just asking for 2 hours of your time once a month.
That's true, but also don't quit because we have not been able to fill these seats yet. So
yeah, outside the seats not being filled, that doesn't hurt your responsibility of making quorum.
I don't think this applies to anybody. I'm sorry, Kevin. I don't think this applies to anybody. But in truth, if anybody finds that this is not actually worth it for them, like they'd rather do other things with their time now that they've seen it, if there's a bunch of people who want to be on it, as long as there's a couple who remain, maybe somebody should know that they could do that and they won't face destroying the committee because they didn't show up and there wasn't a quorum, right? So it is where I'm not thinking of anyone in particular. I don't think that even fits, but it might. The people who want to do it, as long as we get people who do want to do it, they can, substitute for us. I'm waiting, that's for sure. And maybe others are waiting too. So there we go.
But that's what's my point, though. As we're filling vacancies, just make your effort to try to come. We all put our time into this, and I still enjoy it, at least. And I really do appreciate everyone on this call, and I get it, right? So we're working hard on our end. So it'd be great if we can continue to make quorum on that.
Kevin, I just want to ask one question.
Sure.
Is the air conditioner not working in your office? Because I see that fan blowing right on you. So is the air conditioning down in the city? Is that what's going on right now?
Yeah. Currently, we are having some AC troubles at 51T receipt. So yeah, I have the fan on.
I'll pray for you.
Father Jonathan, very observant. Very observant. Okay. Anybody else, or should we close up?
I do want to still Carrie and Randy and Pat after this. If you all three can stay on for a second.
Okay. So still we need a motion to, what's the word?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you very much.
Motion.
Okay. A second? Oh, Pat, you should say a second.
No, you second it. I'll take the roll call.
Okay, fine.
So we have a motion to adjourn at 8:09. Roll call, please, of the members present. Vice Chair Randy Feldman,
Aye.
Clerk Carrie Witherell,
Aye.
Member Bernard Reese,
I think you
Dr.
dropped
Reese
out.
left quite a while ago.
Member Annie Heat Merudian,
Aye.
Member Drew Schneblin,
Aye.
Member Reverend Jonathan Slavinskas.
Aye.
The motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Have a great night. Enjoy the 4th of July.
Night, everybody.
Have a good night, everyone.
Bye.